Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and today I'm going to be giving you an updated version of my top 5 NFL teams in both the AFC and the NFC conference. I did this list before about a month ago, so some of the teams are new to the list, and have been on here before and just moved around a bit. As I stated the first time I did one of these lists, it is, of course, going to be subjective in my own opinion. I don't claim to be the final or foremost authority on power ranking NFL teams. I will, however, of course, give my reasons for each placement and back that up with stats, trends, and all that good stuff for each team. But that's enough preamble. You get how lists work. Let's get to the rankings.
They're going to get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that. Believe that. I'm a Raven. It's on. All year. Every year.
We're going to be starting off like we did last time with the NFC teams, and right off the bat, we have a newcomer to the list at the number 5 position, the LA Rams. Last time, the number 5 position was held by the Seattle Seahawks, and I did consider putting them on here again, but since they've lost 4 in a row and 5 of the last 6, while the Rams have won 3 of their last 4, I felt like they were more deserving of the spot. The Rams' offense is getting hot at the right time, and more importantly, it's staying healthy. With more points scored and less points allowed compared to that of the Seahawks, and admittedly moving in a more upward trajectory, the Rams beat them out for my 5th spot. Moving to the 4th spot, we got Detroit Lions, who made the list last time, but they moved down a couple spots since then. They still have a dominant offense, owning a top 10 spot in both passing yards and rushing yards, while winning 4 of their last 6 games and averaging almost 28 points per game over those 6 games. The Lions' main problem isn't its offense, it's that they've allowed over 27 points per game during that spread, with a home game against the Denver Broncos, 2 matchups against Minnesota, and a game in Dallas against the Cowboys. Lions team has a tough road ahead in the last 4 weeks before the playoffs. The third team in the NFC was the first team in the NFC the last time we did this, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. The month of December has not been kind to the city of brotherly love. After winning the thrilling overtime game against the Buffalo Bills, they were then beaten at home by the 49ers by 23 points. Follow that up with a loss in Dallas the following week where they lost by 20 points. This Eagles offense needs to regain its identity, and the defense needs to step over the next 4 weeks. A game against Seattle in Seattle, 2 matchups against the Giants, and a home game against Cardinals make for a fairly favorable schedule to end the season. But the Eagles need to go out there and they need to make the most of it to gain some momentum before heading into the playoffs. The second best team in the NFC is a team that I had ranked 4th last time, and they seem to take it personally, as the Dallas Cowboys have been an absolute juggernaut over the last 5 weeks. During that span, they haven't scored less than 33 points in a game and are averaging over 44 points per game. Their offense is good. Their defense is good. And when they've been really consistent on both sides of the ball going down the stretch in the second half of this season, you might be hearing all these wonderful things and thinking to yourself, why are they only ranked number 2? And unfortunately, that's because they suffer from the same problem that a top 5 AFC team also suffers from. They haven't really played many good football teams. I put that in quotes because I don't put too much stock in that argument, usually because you can only play the teams that you face on the schedule. But the only 3 teams that I would consider to be good football teams they faced and won against were the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Eagles this past week. But over the next 3 weeks, we'll see how good this team is as they have to go to Buffalo, then they got to go to Miami, then they have the Detroit Lions coming into town before finishing their season against the Commanders. With all that being said, the Cowboys' offense and defense is certainly going to be a tough out in the playoffs. Now, finally, we have the number 1 team in the NFC, and this should come as no surprise to you guys, the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners have been one of the most consistently dominant teams in the entire NFL throughout this season. They came out winning 5 games to start the season, losing 3 games rather inexplicably, and then went back to rattling off 5 wins in a row. During this current 5-game win streak that they're on, their defense has not allowed more than 19 points in a game, while their offense has not scored less than 27 points in any of those 5 games. Besides being middle of the pack against opponents' passing games, there's almost no statistic that this team on offense or defense is not top 5 in, which is utterly ridiculous. In the 4 remaining games of the season for the Niners, they have only 2 games that could honestly threaten this team with a potential loss, that being the Baltimore Ravens on Christmas night and the final game of the season against the LA Rams, which could potentially have a significant impact on the NFC wildcard race. In all honesty, though, looking at this as an objective, unbiased football fan, I don't know if anybody that these teams are going to go against is going to cause another loss before the Super Bowl for the Niners. All right, that's enough of the NFC. Let's get to the AFC top 5. We'll start out with the number 5 Jacksonville Jaguars. Although Jacksonville is on a 2-game losing streak, with an approaching Sunday night matchup versus the Ravens, they still have a dangerous offense. They've won some good games against good teams like Houston, Texans, and the Bills, but they've also dropped some games against good teams like the 49ers and this past week against the Browns. With Lawrence's injury hopefully being more of a scare rather than something that can affect him long term, the Jags should make it into the playoffs as the divisional winner with a chance to advance at least to the divisional round. The Jaguars placing on this list, for me, is probably the most controversial. Given that the Bills just beat the Chiefs and the Bengals are surprisingly steady even without Joe Burrow, the Jags currently hold the number 5 position in the AFC ranking, and it's a bit tenuous. The number 4 spot in the AFC rankings goes to the Kansas I'm sorry, goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. And to say that the Chiefs have been underperforming lately would be an understatement. The Chiefs have only scored more than 30 points 3 times this season and only once in the last 6 games that they played. Over the last 6 game stretch, they went 2-4 with losses coming against the Broncos, Eagles, Packers, and Bills. Now, the two main reasons I don't have the Chiefs completely out of the top 5 by this point is mainly because the losses they've had have come against good competitive teams, and the other reason, again, maybe this is bias, is because counting out Mahomes and Kelsey would be like counting out Tom Brady and Gronkowski. If they can win a Super Bowl last year without Tyreek Hill, they certainly have a fighting chance for the rest of the season given how well their defense has been playing over the course of the year and how easy their final 4 games are. Speaking of good defenses, the number 3 spot in the AFC rankings is the Cleveland Browns. Yuck. With the addition of Joe Flacco at quarterback, they now at least know what they're getting under center. There'll most likely still be a game or two over the course of the rest of the season, or maybe even in the playoffs, where Joe may lose you a game, but he just as well might win you that game as well, based on what he does with the ball in his hands. Over the course of the Browns season, they've had 4 different quarterbacks under center and are still 8-5. They currently hold a wild card spot if the regular season ended today, and I'm going to pretend, not really, that 38-year-old Joe Flacco is as dangerous as he was on the road to the Super Bowl in 2012. Look, he certainly has been their best option so far this season without Watson, and if you asked me at the start of the season who would win between the Browns and the Chiefs, I definitely would have not said the Browns. But given the fact that they have a good defense, almost as good at least as the Chiefs, and I actually trust the weapons and the run game from the Browns more than the Chiefs right now, I'd say the Browns have them. The number 2 spot in the AFC rankings is held by the Miami Dolphins. Let's real quick go over the pros and cons with this Dolphins team. The pros include being second in points scored, being first in yards gained, being first in passing yards, second in passing touchdowns, second in rushing yards, first in rushing touchdowns, and first in rushing yards per attempt. Just like with the Cowboys in the NFC, you may be wondering at this point what is holding back the Dolphins from being the number 1 team in the AFC. And the way I see it, the Dolphins' biggest con is simply not showing up against good competitive teams when they need to. When this team plays well, they play very well. And in their 9 wins this season, they're averaging 37 points per game and 467 yards of offense per game. But in their 4 losses, they're only averaging 17 points per game and 323 yards of total offense. Their final 4 games are not easy by any stretch, with the New York Jets, the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Bills in the finale. I do expect this team to be a dangerous one in the playoffs, but they're going to need to make sure they don't falter at the wrong time, because as we all know in the playoffs, you mess up once, your season is over. Finally, the number 1 team in the AFC is the team with the best record in the AFC, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. While the Ravens may not have a 70-point win and they might not have as many stars on their teams as some other teams do, the Ravens have consistently won and consistently improved in many areas over the season. With a new offensive coordinator and many new weapons, it's going to take some time for this offense to gel. But once they hit their stride, they really haven't stopped. In the first 5 games, the Ravens go 3-2 to start the season, where the defense was certainly doing the heavy lifting, with the offense only scoring 21.8 points per game, while the defense held teams to an average of only 15 points per game. Over the next 8 games, however, they won 7 while averaging 31.5 points per game, and their defense still only allowing 17.8 points per game. In 4 games this season, their defense has allowed under 10 points to opponents. Admittedly, though, the offense is only number 1 in 2 statistical categories: rushing yards with over 2,000, and they average the best starting field position at their own 31.8-yard line. So what does this team get their wins from? It's consistency. Their offense ranks top 5 in points scored, yards allowed, rushing attempts, rushing touchdowns, rushing yards per attempt. The defense is top 5 in points allowed, yards allowed, first down completions, passing yards, passing touchdowns, rushing attempts, rushing touchdowns, of which they have only allowed 4 on the whole season. While currently I have the Ravens as the number 1 team in the AFC, they have the most difficult schedule remaining. The 4 teams the Ravens face to end the season are at Jacksonville, at San Francisco, hosting the Miami Dolphins, and then they end the season hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. While currently the Ravens hold the number 1 seed, these last 4 games are going to determine whether or not they hold on to it and receive that coveted first round bye. Alright, there you have it. Those are my rankings for the top 5 teams in each of the conferences, but tell me what you think of my list. Do you agree? Is there a team you think I should have left off the list? Maybe a team you think I should have added? Let me know in the comments section below. If you would have changed anything to either of these lists, what would it be? Or maybe just what order? I really appreciate everyone checking out the video. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like and consider subscribing for more Ravens content. I love making these videos for you guys.